Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Phoenix Meets. In what feels like a sign of better days ahead, we're back on the road again, and today we're in the West Midlands in Worcester City, which is of course home to Worcester Bosch, the UK leading boiler manufacturer. And we're here today to delve into some of the products and technologies and the innovation that Worcester Bosch are investing in to deliver the energy needs of the future. Martyn, thank you so much for hosting us this afternoon. We're just off the factory floor, and I think it's fair to say that the energy industry generally is now starting to embark on one of its most ambitious journeys in terms of delivering net carbon zero in the next number of decades. But this is not new to Worcester Bosch. Whilst I think the momentum in this area has really picked up over the last couple of years, you've had a focus in this area for quite some time.
I guess our first product really to truly get into low carbon territory was heat pumps. We introduced heat pumps in 2008 into the UK. They have been selling to varying degrees of success, of course, but I think the thing which has brought more publicity and profile to us is our investigations into hydrogen, because a heat pump is a great technology. You know, it's almost like turning water into wine. You're turning air into heat. You know, it's quite surprising. But they're not for everybody. They're not suitable for every home. Well, they probably are, but you need to do more and more renovation type work. That aside, we've been doing solar thermal as well for some years. We're in a training room now where dotted around us are heat interface units, which is another decarbonisation product almost, where they take heat from calorifiers and tanks. So yeah, some people call us a boiler manufacturer. We're, I think, a lot more than that though.
And back in Northern Ireland, the green hydrogen opportunity in particular looks fairly favourable to the energy landscape we enjoy. And in previous episodes actually of Phoenix Meets, we've talked to people who are pioneering some of the work in that regard. You've been in the heating industry for some time. When it comes to hydrogen, what specific, benefits or what specific aspects of hydrogen do you think are well suited to the UK energy industry?
I guess I'm at I would say the end of the trail, in the house then, and knowing consumers as I think we do, and installers as I think we do, boilers are almost irreplaceable with anything other than a boiler unless you are prepared to make some changes. And with 17 million homes with a combi boiler, which half the time fits inside a kitchen cupboard. Some people say they're the same size as one. No, they're even smaller most of the time. So to fit a heat pump or something instead of that is a real challenge. So hydrogen for me, and it could have been any other carbon-free gas, but hydrogen was the one proposed by Bayes back in 2015. And it wholly makes sense. We've proven that it can be done. It's technically proven it can be done. It's now just the other parts of the chain and jigsaw which need forming.
So you touched upon that in terms of, well, our gas network, for example, back in Greater Belfast is polyethylene plastics. We feel that we're fairly fortunate in terms of being able to go at pace at this at the early days. But your production line is putting out gas boilers today. Yeah. What does the next number of years look like in terms of that transitioning into something that is putting out your hydrogen boilers at a greater scale?
Yeah, on a typical year we would make 250,000, 280,000 boilers here. We can easily do 1,000 to 2,000 a day. So all of those products at the moment, and actually probably the last 20 years, are suitable for hydrogen, but only to a certain proportion. So you can blend up to 20% hydrogen and natural gas and run any of the boilers we've been making for all that time quite safely, quite acceptably with that. To change to hydrogen boilers per se, we are seeking obviously a directive from the government They released a hydrogen strategy paper about 3 weeks ago, and they intend to consult between now and the end of the year on a date they chose of 2026 as the date when you can only buy a hydrogen ready boiler. If that takes place, I suspect there will be a lot of people who want to go early though. So we are putting hydrogen pipelines into our production facility next year in readiness for increased volumes of hydrogen ready boilers. So we can swap given time, and if 4 years is the deadline, presumably it comes out positive on the consultation, we'll be ready. All of our appliances, because at the moment we've only made one of our ranges hydrogen ready, and there are 2 other different price levels, etc., different sizes. So we've got a lot of work to do still, but we've learnt a lot, so we'll be ready.
So let me get this right. From a gas distribution company perspective, we always foresee ourselves as starting to blend hydrogen into the gas network at the earliest opportunity, but we don't see that going above 20%, certainly this decade and into the early years of the 30s. So all boilers coming off your production line today can incorporate that 20% blend without any change to consumer. You then go into hydrogen ready boilers. I know we're going to talk about these in a little moment, but what do these look like? What do these cost? What's involved in changing these when we actually do come to a level where you're injecting more than 20% of a blend?
Yeah, in the UK at the moment they're working on a presumption that will be anything up to 20% and then 100%. There won't be 30, 40s or 50s. It'll be, up to that level, then a clear 100%. Visually, they look exactly the same as a current boiler we would make today. 95% and more of a hydrogen ready boiler has been donated from a natural gas boiler. So this recognition to all the installers and engineers will be there. They will be aware, oh, that's nothing scary, I'm used to that. The clever bit is inside the combustion chamber, where the burner, the way we ignite the flame, the way we sense that the flame is alight. That's where we've had to do some clever sort of hard thought through and time consuming development work. But to the naked eye, you would struggle to tell the difference between one from the other.
And funny, when we were coming into this room today, we met with a number of engineers starting out in their journey as Worcester service engineers, but of course the gas industry has thousands of skilled, experienced people working across the breadth of the country. Those skills are going to become so important in enabling decarbonisation and energy transition over the next number of years.
Yeah, it's very true, and I think that's probably another ace up the sleeve for hydrogen. The amount of retraining you require to work on hydrogen boilers it's akin to working on LPG boilers. It may be another day of training and accreditation. So it's a third gas, we have methane, LPG, it'll be a third gas to work upon. So it's all there, they're so familiar with it already. It's just the characteristics of the gas they would have to be taught. If you compare that with other low carbon alternatives, such as heat pumps, then that's quite a lot more in-depth training required because they are so fundamentally different.
And you touched upon, Martyn, the fact that Worcester Bosch are and provide a range of different heating products and solutions, and heat pumps being one of those. And heat pumps really do seem to divide opinion from time to time. And I don't think there's any doubt that heat pumps have a role to play in delivering energy transition in local regions. What that role is going to be and what it looks like is less clear. From your experience with heat pumps, what are the challenges of particularly around retrofitting heat pumps into existing properties?
Yeah, physical challenges are the main thing, financial as well. But physically, this wall-mounted boiler, that needs to be replaced with generally 3 pieces of equipment. An external unit, that's not normally an issue to site that, but it can be if you're in terraced housing and there's a number of them together. but not normally the biggest problem. We tend to find the biggest problem is locating a home for the hot water storage cylinder when the people have had a combi boiler before. The wall hung unit, which they also need, is roughly the same size as a boiler. Sometimes that wall hung unit, the hydraulic unit, it's got the expansion vessel and the pump and things like that in there. That can sometimes be incorporated into the cylinder cabinet, but quite often it's a wall hung separate unit. So you've now got 3 bits of equipment, one outside, one perhaps in the kitchen where the boiler used to be, and somewhere in the house a hot water storage cylinder is needed. Then you have to look at the heating system itself, and there were some figures issued about 3 months ago from Bayes, their own work, and they suggested that only 6% of existing heating systems are immediately suitable for connection to a heat pump, and therefore 94% aren't without some modifications. And that tends to be radiator sizing. They may be, if you're lucky, they may be large enough to work at the lower flow temperatures a heat pump runs at. But quite often that's not the case, so you have to change single panels for double panels, or even doubles for triple panels now. And then sometimes the pipework feeding the radiators is undersized as well, because there's a higher velocity running through a heat pump system. So it can be quite expensive and quite challenging, quite disruptive, intrusive almost. The days of just turning up with a boiler to sit in place of a failed boiler with a heat pump is not on. You know, a distressed sale, I can't see that happening. You have to be more proactive in planning the replacement of a boiler with a heat pump if that's the way they're going to go.
Yeah, it's interesting because so much of energy transition and decarbonisation has been spoken about at policy level and at industry level, but we forget sometimes that the consumers, and they're going to vote with their feet. They're going to want choice in this area. They want something that delivers the same output of heat in a way that is seamless, or as seamless as what they've been experiencing in recent generations.
And that again is probably the other huge challenge we've experienced over the last 12, 13 years of selling heat pumps. Their behaviour is generally more used to running a boiler, so turning it on for an hour or two in the morning, going to work and school, and then turning it back on in the evening. Because they're high temperature, they can heat the home quite rapidly. Heat pump can't really work like that, so you have to keep a base temperature in the house all the time, and that to some people straight away is slightly alien. They're thinking, that's running and I ordinarily wouldn't have that turned on, I must be wasting heat.
Clearly the trials and demonstration projects that are happening right across the United Kingdom are encouraging in that regard. We've had success with the early stages of High Deploy, the H21 project, and I know that your team are working on one in Fife coming up soon. Can you give us a bit of an insight into, I suppose, the early wins on those particular projects?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, the first one was Keele University, where they blended 20% blend of hydrogen to natural gas, 130 or 140 appliances. The trial's now stopped. It ended around May of this year, and it was actually celebrated last week in London. And it was a success. We weren't surprised though. Since 1996 we've been testing our appliances on 22% blend of hydrogen. So it was always going to be, we thought, a no-issue trial. But at least the end users were happy. They didn't notice any difference. I heard interviews where they were asking the ladies who were working in the kitchens, do the chips fry as well as they do with 20% of hydrogen? It sounds a stupid question, but it is the sort of thing which touches reality with people. So that was successful. That's now going to move, or has moved, to a further trial of occupied properties in Winlaton in Gateshead. And I saw it about 3 weeks ago. I saw the blending facility. It was quite a warm day, so they weren't blending that much. It was only about 3%. You need a huge throughput of gas. You need cold weather, really. So the gas is flowing nicely, and then you can push 20% into it. That's going to run for about 10 months, and if that's successful, they might then change all those homes to 100% hydrogen as well. The actual blending facility is in Gateshead, where it's at Low Thornley, where they've built 2 hydrogen homes, and that's a fascinating thing to see. They're now accepting invites from anybody online, so it's a project with Northern Gas Networks and Cadent, and you can book a slot if you like and go and see these 2 homes. The boiler is quite uninteresting really, because it looks just like any other boiler. The only thing you can see is a tap next to it, the kitchen sink. Turn the tap on, steam coming out of it, and that's got no carbon in it, so that's lovely to say that. But the cookers and the fires, that's really fascinating, because we didn't think, I had no idea, at least I've no knowledge on cookers, but how could you get a flame picture on a cooker? And they're using flame diffusion. They're actually mixing the air and gas at the point at the top of the burner. So you do see this flame.
Get the real effect.
You do, yeah. It's not quite as bright and as blue as natural gas is, but you can definitely see it. And for peace of mind, there's neon lights on this particular cooker saying that there is a flame here, because it takes a minute or 2 for it to really start growing in colour. The fires, they were lovely. You wouldn't have. They're not flickering flame type fires. It's a glow like a basket of coal. But it's gas meters are there, of course, as well. And some of these gas meters are hydrogen, they're hydrogen ready, so they can be fitted now to the natural gas supply and converted should hydrogen come along. So these little steps, and the energy ministers go in there, and politicians and scientists and journalists. It's all added value to this hydrogen story. And now we're moving to hydrogen cities and towns, and the village, shall we call it, the first one you mentioned is in Leavenmouth in Fife, 300 homes. SGN are the project managers, owners, funders of it. And that's a nice project, because it's an opt-in or not. There is a pipe literally side by side with a natural gas pipe under the road. And they're inviting people who live on that road, would you like to join a hydrogen way of life or not? And some will say no, and some will say yes. And they will have a fire, a cooker, if they've got a fire already, a fire, a cooker and a boiler. It's a great project, that one, because that's run from green hydrogen, which we mentioned earlier, so on and offshore wind, powering electrolyzers, storing the hydrogen, and then pump down the lines. And then I think we grow to there's potential for that site actually to grow to 1,000, but there's also then this HyNet project in the northwest, which is probably going to be steam reformation of hydrogen, feeding industrial premises and some housing as well.
I think the fascinating thing that really comes across in you reflecting on an awful lot of those projects is the fact that there's so many different industry bodies now collaborating on this.
Oh,
so whether it be training centres, whether it be manufacturers as we are here today, government bodies, the network operators across the regions, it really does feel like there's a momentum coming. And funny, I saw details in your reception area that 130,000 miles of gas network in Great Britain, something like £40 billion worth of public investment going into that network. So it does feel fairly logical that UK government would be looking to protect that investment and protect that infrastructure. Yeah,
it does. And the hydrogen strategy paper, it didn't endorse it as strongly as I would have liked, but they did commit to 5 gigawatt of hydrogen production, which would run about 60,000 homes, perhaps.
That's by 2030?
By 2030. Yeah. And then up to 45 gigawatt by 2035, and that's more like it. That's now 3 million homes potentially running off it. So it's baby steps. We're crawling, walking, running, but there is some impatience out there. Obviously, we can see it. The world is changing climate-wise for the worse. So there is impatience, but should we do it right and do it properly and suit everybody's pocket and home? Yeah, I think so. It's worth the wait.
Martyn, I'm going to end by thanking you for joining us on this episode of Phoenix Meets. If I do my maths right, I think the company's been around since 62?
It is,
1962, so you're coming up to your 60th.
Yeah.
And it promises to be a very interesting next number of decades as Worcester Bosch, a leading manufacturer in UK heating outputs, becomes an integral part of that transition period.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we've got a lot to look forward to. We're going to celebrate well as well, though, don't worry, next year. But yeah, it is an exciting time to be in the industry, and we've got a huge part to play.
No, look, thanks again and very best wishes.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.